Hey everybody. Today we speak to Mary Louise Sanchez, author of The Wind Called My Name, an incredible novel that I know you're going to enjoy. I loved it so much, I made it the keynote novel for our Hispanic Heritage Celebration over at Mr. Alex's bookshelf. There's also a special treat in the interview. Mary sings for us. I know you're going to want to stick around and hear that. But first, let's roll that opening montage. Mary Louise Sanchez, thank you so much for coming today. It's so nice to finally meet you after having read your book. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Alex.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm just glad that people like you agree to come talk to me after what I do to authors.
Well, I've been holed up, so it's nice to talk to somebody.
I get it. I made Rebecca promise to tell people that not to tell people that I made her cry. So, you know, hopefully that didn't get out too much. So the book we're going to be talking about today is your incredible book called The Wind Called My Name. And I have a copy to hold up here because it's a beautiful book and a beautiful cover on a beautiful book. I want you to tell me very quickly what this is right here on the cover.
That's the New Visions Award that I won from Lee and Low Publishers in 2016, and that meant that they published me.
Right, but tell people that aren't familiar with what the New Visions Award is a little bit about what that award is, because it's not just any award.
Um, it's an award that Lee and Low every year gives two awards: a New Visions and New Voices. New Voices is for picture books, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's what that one is. And New Voices is for middle grade authors. But you need to be of a marginalized culture or community.
Underrepresented community. Right?
Underrepresented, right.
And you need to be good. Not just anybody gets this. A lot of people compete for this award, right?
Right.
So sell the item first, Mary Louise. Come on. You
well,
got the award. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal, but I didn't think I was going to get it because I sent my manuscript in quite early, and I thought, oh no, I should have sent it in late so they'd remember. But obviously they remembered.
Obviously it doesn't work that way, right? Obviously they remembered it anyway. So I want you to give me very quickly, for people that aren't familiar with your book, the elevator pitch of the book, and then we're going to play a game, and then we're going to get into some serious questions. So give me the elevator pitch really quick.
Okay, well, it's 1934, and the great dust storms of the Great Depression moved Margarita Sandoval, who was 10 years old, and her family to southern Wyoming. They push her there. And she has mixed feelings because she's going to leave her ancestral New Mexico home for southern Wyoming, and she doesn't know what to expect, although she's hopeful that she'll get a friend. But when they get to Wyoming and she makes a friend, the winds do start pushing. And the biggest wind is that her father and her brother, who work on the railroad, might possibly lose their job, and they might not, and the family might not be able to help their abuela in New Mexico save the land.
Right, and there's a great mystery that she ends up helping to solve with her newfound friend. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's really the big denouement, if you will, that happens in the book, right? So I have some interesting questions about that, at least I hope. Hopefully we won't give away the story, but now it's time to play Clear the Shelf. And I have 4 questions for you that don't have anything to do with absolutely anything, except maybe it'll reveal some character flaw, let's call it, that you might have, or something interesting in your character. So
Why are there so many songs about rainbows?
Maybe I think it's because colors, affect the way we see things. Sometimes it's not good, and sometimes it is good. So
I'm
that's
sorry,
one
that
reason.
answer is brilliant, but it's wrong. The correct answer is kumquat.
Kumquat.
Yep, that's just the correct answer. Crust or no crust?
Crust.
Now I love you. Now you can basically say whatever you want, and you're my kind of girl, right? Tell me about the crust.
Well, like if you're making lasagna, it's those edges that are crispy that you want to eat.
When are you having me over?
Hey, I have some in the freezer.
Right. So you don't like the brownie from the middle, you like the brownie from the corner,
From the
right?
end.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Now we're cooking with gas, as it were.
And I cook a lot too.
Me too. We cook nonstop here. So this whole quarantine thing we're under, we're like, we never went out to eat anyway. So it's not a big deal. So let me ask you, if you could live in a book, what book would it be and why?
I think I would live in my book because I would get to meet my great grandmother up close and personal, like my mother did.
All right. Well, you've given me the greatest segue in the world that I can possibly ask for. So we heard the elevator pitch, and we know that this is about the family moving from New Mexico, to Wyoming during the Great Depression, and basically it's in search of work to make a better life. Right, the classic immigrant story, except these people weren't immigrants at that point. They were already born in New Mexico, which is a thread, right, that's captured throughout the entire novel. No, we're not Mexican, we're New Mexican. How much of it is fact and how much of it is fiction?
Most of it is, the people are all factual. The people are, except for the antagonist. I had to change her name because it's a real person. And so my editor said, I might get in trouble for that. So all the people are true. The circumstances for the most part are true. Either it was my experience or my mom's or, something. I don't know what percentage, I guess maybe 75% of the book is true.
So let's talk about some of those experiences. They move to a new town, and the first thing that happens is that all the kids are renamed.
I didn't hear that question. What?
They move to a new town, and the first thing that happens is basically that all the kids are renamed.
Oh, yes, they are renamed.
So did that happen in your family?
Yes, it did. To my mother, yes, it did.
And what was your mother's given name, or what is your mother's name?
Okay, Margarita Lucia, Margaret Lucille.
And what did they name her at school? Did they name her Maggie?
They did. That was her nickname.
And that's where we get the Maggie in the book from. So I have to ask you, and I did give you a little bit of time to think about this because in our pre-interview, I told you I was going to ask you this question. I believe in telling the truth. Your name is Mary Louise. It's not Maria Luisa. Why is that?
First of all, I was born in Wyoming. And my mother was born in Wyoming. So you tend to use English sounding names. And also I was named for, my mother said, a beautiful girl that was in her high school class. And her name was Mary Louise. So that's why.
Well, there you go.
Louise. Yeah.
I'm an Alexander. I'm not an Alejandro. And I asked my mother, why did you name me Alexander? Because it was my mother who named me, not Alejandro. And her response was, well, for starters, you were born in the United States. You're the only one of your siblings that was born in the United States. And we had too many Alejandros in the family. So I love the name Alex, but I wanted your name to be different. So I purposely named you in English. So that's why I was interested. That's why I was curious. Do you think any of it had to do with helping you to assimilate more into your environment? Do you think that factored into your mother's equation?
No, I don't think so, because I don't really think my soul never assimilated for sure. No, I always
Explain
know.
to us what you mean by that.
I know who I am. I mean, I studied genealogy. My mother told us stories. My dad told us stories. We know who we are. I never wanted to be anything but who I was. Never.
Right, but for people like you and me that are completely fluent in English, who sound as, let's use the word white, as the person next door, right, with our standard Midwestern accents, to have a different soul is something that is not easy to grow up with, right? And we see the beginnings of that manifest in the book, because there's a real struggle with Margarita as she's being forced to almost transform into Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about the development of your mother and your grandmother and the character.
The development of my mother,
Or how, through the character, or your grandmother, what were their experiences like, and how did it shape the book?
well, my mother's experience was that she had this friend in the book. Her name is Caroline. She really did have a friend. That wasn't her real name. I had to change it, by the way. And she would go places with her friend, you know, like to church and things like that, because there wasn't a Catholic church in the little town she was in. And she kind of adopted some of the, you know, practices of the friend, but she never doubted who she was. She always knew she was New Mexican, and she was proud of that. That's why when they would say, "You're Mexican," it's like, no, I'm not from Mexico. Why?
And you have one particularly exquisite line in the book where you say, "We didn't move," or I'm paraphrasing. Actually, let me turn to the right page so that I'm sure that I get it correctly. It is, I have it marked. And I know that you're going to recognize it immediately because you wrote it, but it has to do with the border. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. I do.
All right, well, why don't you say it for us? Because
Let's see if I can remember how I wrote it. We didn't cross the border crossed us.
Exactly. Exactly. That is such an important thing to note in the book. And one of the comments that I have is that the book is very historically accurate, right? Because many people
Yes.
know that that part of the United States flew under many different flags, but I don't think they understand.
No, they don't.
What you were trying to explain. And what was your message with that simple but very profound line?
That we've always been here, and that, you know, just because we maybe speak Spanish or look a little different than you, we've been here a long time, even longer than you have. Especially if you came over on a boat from Europe. Even if you're a pilgrim, my pilgrims were here first.
Right, and there's the great comedian whose name escapes me at the moment, who talks about Leguizamo, who talks about the great treasures of the great civilizations of Hispanic culture that came before the conquistadors, and he says, you want to know where our great art and artifacts are? They were melted into doubloons. That's where they are. Yeah. Right? So, but right. So the point is, we were a part of this land first, whether or not you realize it. What other historical tidbits did you include in the book as part of the illumination process for the reader? Because they're very subtle, but they're in there, and that's why it's a historical novel or a historical fiction novel. Well,
I did include the fact that I did have a great-great-grandfather who fought in the Civil War. And the reason I put that in is because one time we went to Gettysburg, and they had a sign that said, if you have an ancestor who fought in the Civil War, let us know and we'll print something, a certificate up. So I went really excited to the people, and I told them, and I even knew the name, and they said, oh, no, they never fought in New Mexico. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This was a very major battle. Otherwise, the West would have been Confederate.
It would have fallen, exactly.
Yeah. And
did they correct it since?
I have no idea. I've never been back, but I just thought that's ignorance, that you don't know. You know, that they
Especially
only
at a
think
place
of the
like-
East.
Right, especially in a place like Gettysburg, that you're supposed to know that history.
Yes.
And quite well. That's actually just not that far from where I live. So next time I go to Gettysburg,
Yeah, ask.
I'll make sure and ask, have they taken the corrective steps to do it?
Mhm.
How did you feel when you discovered that you had an ancestor that had fought in the Civil War? I imagine that must have been a very interesting moment.
Well, I knew about it since I was a child, so it didn't affect me until I was older and understood what the Civil War was.
But I
And
have to tell
now-
you that as a reader, I was this many years old when I knew that there had been a battle in that part of the country. Right? Because that's not something that they teach us in school.
No.
And it was your book that brought that information to me. So it was kind of like, what? And then, of course, you know, being a journalist, I had to go site check you to make sure that it was right. And I'm like, no, she's right. And in fact, I stopped right while I was reading, and I'm like, is this part of the fiction or is this part of the historical? And I went to look it up, and sure enough, you were right. So you throw in our dichos, or our idioms, for people who aren't following along in the Spanish, and they say, gracia es andar entre las llamas y no quemarse. And I'll do a very quick translation. Grace is to be among flames and not get burned. I think that the entire experience in the book for our family, and you do end up thinking that they're your family as a reader,
No, good.
is that dance in the flames and trying to be graceful at the same time. How did you do that without going into mushy or wallowing in the ennui, if you will? Because it's very difficult to write that without sounding self-serving. Yet the writing doesn't sound like that at all.
You're talking about all the dichos that I wrote?
I'm talking about the story in general. I mean, because here you have a family that really wasn't treated very well, and they had to go through all sorts of hardships, but they still come across as dancing with grace, if you will, among the flames. And they invoke empathy without invoking pity, which is very difficult.
Well, I think I'm just trying to play on their pride. You know, they're a proud people, and they knew who they were, and they still know who they are, you know. I think that was the message I was trying to get across, that we know who we are, whether you label us or not. You know, it's not a big deal because I already know who I am.
So I see a blanket in the background there. That's pretty cool, actually. Can you tell me, did you buy that at Kmart?
Not hardly. That blanket was woven by my dad's grandmother. He's not in the book, but that was my great grandmother's blanket that she wove.
Woven on a loom?
Yes, it's a Rio Grande design, which is different than from Mexico. This is a New Mexican traditional pattern.
Right. From having spent some considerable amount of time in the pueblos, I recognize the patterns actually rather quickly. It's gorgeous. How old is it?
Oh, I'd say about 150 years old.
Right, and those things are only, I have to admit, I recognized what it was, right? So they're only trotted out for like special occasions. Have you used it? Because I imagine by now it's very fragile.
It is. I put it out here, but because I knew I was going to do an interview, I keep
Thank
it where there's no light because I don't want it to deteriorate. Let's see, where was I going with this? Oh, now I do take it out, like when we have a wedding, there's a traditional ballad that we sing called the Entrega. I don't know if it's common with other Hispanic, like Puerto Ricans or whatever, but in New Mexico, it was a tradition that you sing to the bride and groom and you're giving the children to each other. The parents are doing that. So someone would sing this Entrega. Well, now I'm the one who sings it to the couples and they kneel on the blanket. So I've done
So,
it for.
I have to ask you to do just a little verse of that for
Okay.
us, right? I mean, I have to, please.
Let's see, it's been a while. I'm thinking of a corrido I wrote. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I can't even think of the words to one now. I'm thinking of the corrido I wrote, and it's not coming to me, but it's all about, these children are coming from the church, and now it's like a whole ballad, and now we're giving you to each other, and
well, you have to stop me if you get inspiration in the middle, because I studied theater and voice in college, so singing is something right up my alley, and making people
I'll sing you part of my corrido that's in my brain right now.
I would love to hear that.
And it's in Spanglish, okay?
I speak Spanglish.
Okay. Listen, dear gente, and hear me. Hail to a man now at rest, Jose Martinez Soldado, buried in Alton, the West. Born in July 1920, in an adobe brown house, Indians and Spanish together, Viejo revered town of Taos. And I can't remember how the rest of it goes, but that's not this story. That's not this story,
wonderful.
but I wrote that because I knew that this soldier's from New Mexico, and he got the Medal of Honor, by the way. But I wrote it because I knew he would have heard this kind of music. And so
it's obvious to me that you love the study of your family and you love the study of genealogy.
I do.
What sort of things have you uncovered? And share that with us, please.
Okay, well, I'm one of those original families that came in 1598 with Don Oñate. Now he's the bad guy. He's the bad guy now, but because he did cut off the feet of the Indians. That's true, but he brought my family, so it's a mixed bag. So I have
history is complicated.
It is, but yeah. So I've gone back quite a few generations there. In fact, that's already 1598. So then I even go further. And there's one line that's in Toledo, Spain, and I'm like, I want to be Jewish.
Right, because the Spanish government opened up the entire Spanish residency to Jews that could trace their lineage back to Spain. I have to say, even I looked into that. Spain is one of our favorite places in the world, with Madrid being my favorite country.
Me too. I love that. But it's like, yeah, I wished I could find. I mean, my DNA says there's Middle Eastern, so I'm guessing.
That's another thing that we share in common.
Yeah.
Are you sure we're not related?
We probably are. Although I haven't seen Fernandez in my genealogy yet.
Mine goes back to actually the Sephardic Jews in Spain, and then the other side goes back to Lebanon. So through Cuba, it all goes through Cuba. So I got the Lebanese nose and the extra white features from everybody, as it were. But it's hard to throw Hispanics together into one lump, right? Because we all come in different shapes and sizes.
That's exactly what I was trying to say in the book. Let me be who I am. Do not label me. I mean, if you want to label me, I'm not going to take it. let me be who I am, and let us let all Latinos and Hispanics, let us tell you who we are. We're all a little bit different, some similarities, but we're different. Don't
So
generalize us.
I'm going to ask you a question that I end every interview with, and I usually ask it about the protagonist, but the protagonist is your mother, so I'm not going to ask it of her. But
Oh, you can ask.
oh, no, because it's much more interesting the
Okay.
way I have it phrased.
Okay.
So your mother's best friend in the book, whose name is going to remain hidden
Right.
because she's a real person, right?
Right.
She's a grown-up now, and she reads what you've written about her. What's her reaction?
I didn't know that I was bothered, that bothered you.
Or was that her actual reaction?
I don't know. I don't know. My mother actually probably had a good relationship with her friend. I'm basing that experience on my own. I had a really good friend, but she, in hindsight, I see she was trying to make me assimilate to be what she was. And so I put that for my mother. So that part
Well,
I just made up.
you know, it works beautifully. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. The Wind Called My Name. Mary Louise Sanchez, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm
Well,
going to keep
thank you.
talking to Mary Louise for a few minutes. The rest of you can join me back in the studio, but hold on, because I might have a couple of words to say after I'm done talking with her, all right? See you soon.
Thank you, Alex.
Oh, my pleasure.
I love historical fiction books because they put history in a context, a rather personal context, that we otherwise would be unable to share. And Mary has captured her family's move and struggle beautifully in The Wind Called My Name. I really hope that school boards across the country pick it up, because it is a Hispanic version of Little House on the Prairie. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And by the way, yes, we have a book giveaway. All you have to do is sign up for the YouTube channel, turn notifications on. Of course you have to turn notifications on. Otherwise, how would you and I stay in touch? And go sign up for the blog via email, Mr. Alex's Bookshelf. There's a link in the description box that tells you exactly what to do. Because at Mr. Alex's Bookshelf, we know that the word parent is not just a noun, it's also a verb. I'll see you next time.